Good evening once again, and welcome to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in Guyana over the past week or so. And as I normally say, we always have a very packed agenda because Guyana is a dynamic society and we always have many important issues to discuss at any given interval. I want to take this opportunity to say good evening to all our viewers in West Coast Berbice, East Berbice, Quarantine, and of course all our listeners and viewers who are joining us on Freedom Radio from Rob Street, Georgetown. Welcome and good evening. And as usual, lastly but most importantly, I want to say good evening and welcome to all of our viewers who are joining us right across this land on Facebook, right across the Caribbean on Facebook, right across North America on Facebook, Europe and further afield. Please message your friends quickly, invite them to join us on tonight's program of Issues in the News. Press that share button on your Facebook page so that your friends and followers can join us automatically by you sharing this program on your Facebook account. So I want to begin by recognizing and empathizing with our people across this land who have been inundated with flooding. It's a serious natural disaster that is confronting our country. Thousands of residents, thousands of our people are underwater. Their homes are underwater. Their crops and farms have been destroyed. The canals are overtapping. The conservancies are very high and overtapping. The rivers are overflowing in the highland regions. Of course, we have this phenomenon taking place in Suriname. It's taking place in Brazil, and Guyana is likewise inundated with flood waters. Every single day, ministers of our government have been in the waters with the people right across the length and breadth of this country. Our president is leading by example. As I speak, I believe he's still in Region 5, where he went and spent most of today to speak with the people to see how we can assist. Government is unleashing a regime of reliefs for those affected. We are still working out various ways and means by which we can compensate, by which we can attempt to compensate rather, because you really can't compensate people for the damage that they have endured, the anguish, the suffering, the pain, the inconvenience that they continue to endure. Government is doing all that we can possibly do. Our ministers are in the fields and in the waters with the people. We are going to the parliament to seek a $10 billion approval, emergency funding to pump into the country to help to alleviate the suffering caused by the flood waters right across the length and breadth of Guyana. So I want to recognize that our people are in a serious situation, and I want to salute them and I want to ask them to keep the faith. This water will go and we will get back to normalcy again. So I just wanted to speak to that very important issue and also to remind that we are still in a pandemic. We are now coping with two serious disasters, a medical pandemic as well as the flood waters. But our people are strong, our economy is resilient, and we shall overcome. Our vaccination program at the level of the government continues right across the length and breadth of Guyana, and persons should now be getting their second doses of the various vaccines. We have enough supplies now. There was a shortage, but I believe that we received our supplies. So everyone should be able to get their second doses. And please ensure that you get vaccinated. Stop this foolishness about not being vaccinated and about you making choices of your own. So far, from all the statistics that we have seen, not a single person who has been vaccinated has died. Let me repeat that. Not a single vaccinated person has died of COVID. It means that the vaccine is working. It means that the vaccine is saving lives. Please do not be foolish. Do not be foolish, and ensure that you get vaccinated. It is the only measure that you can take to seriously protect yourself and your family and your loved ones from this deadly virus. So I continue to appeal to you. Vaccines are being administered and disseminated right across the length and breadth of Guyana. Despite the floodwaters, we still have the vaccination program running. Please ensure that you do not waste time in getting yourself vaccinated. Today I had cause to write a letter which will be published in the press, in which I attempted to address some criticisms which are being leveled by a grouping of people whom I described as wild men. You know, for a very long time, Guyana has had a bunch of wild extremists, reckless set of persons who are bent on causing mayhem, are bent on causing chaos, are bent on causing public disorder, are bent on causing public confusion in this country. That is their main agenda in life. Everything that they say is intended to excite racial hostilities, to antagonize people, and to excite all type of ill will and spite. That is all that they do all day, all night, whether on the Facebook, whether on some satellite radio program, or whenever they speak, or whenever they write in the newspapers. That is all that they do. So they have launched an attack on the chairperson of GCOM, because the chairperson of GCOM has decided to write to Lowenfield, Myers and Mingo, requesting them to show cause why they should not be removed from office. As you are aware, 3 motions were laid last week, and properly so, by PPP commissioners, by government commissioners, requesting the dismissal of these 3 miscreants. I have repeatedly explained, and you, those who are listening, are very much aware of what these 3 individuals tried to do. Mingo tried to inflate the PNC vote, the APNU AFC vote, by over 20,000 for Region 4 by using a fraudulent spreadsheet. Let me repeat. He tried to inflate APNU AFC votes by over 20,000 by the use of a spreadsheet which was fraudulent and not the statements of poll as the basis to tabulate the Region 4 results. And he was caught red-handed. Not only did he inflate the APNU votes, but he deflated the votes of the other political parties, including the People's Progressive Party. In fact, the People's Progressive Party's votes were deflated in Region 4 by over 2,000. So not only did he give APNU AFC 20,000 more votes than they got at the elections, but he attempted to take from the PPP another 2,000 and something votes in his spreadsheet of madness and fraud, which he attempted to declare as the results. And we all saw the role that Lowenfield played when he refused to use the recount results as the basis for his report, and he started to do his own additions and own disregard of valid ballots so as to give the PNC, APNU, AFC a victory at the poll. And we saw the role, the supporting role that Myers played in the entire process. And everyone, the international community, the regional people, and of course the observers and Guyanese, right-thinking Guyanese, called for their removal. In my view, they should have been removed instantaneously with cause. That is what I have said. There is sufficient basis, there is sufficient grounds, there is sufficient evidence within the commission itself to fire them instantly with cause. But we had to go this long process. Now that the process has been activated, the GCOM chair decides to extend the facility of natural justice to these officers, because at the end of the day, they are public officers. They hold statutory offices. They hold legal offices created by law, by the statutes of this country, the Representation of the People's Act. And as a result, they are public officers or statutory officers, as the law would describe them. And to dismiss them, you are required to afford them a hearing. And that is what Justice of Appeal, retired Claudette Singh, chairperson of GCOM, is attempting to do. One of the madmen that I'm speaking about, one of these wild men, do not understand that. He wrote a whole set of nonsense, published somewhere in the social media, that this is against international best practices, and it's against international standards, and it's against the law. Hogwash. What does this guy know about the law? That is my problem. I don't mind that, persons would like to speak about the law, but don't speak with such authority. The law is not something that you pick up in newspapers and read. The law is a science. You have to study the law. You think the law is something that you just pick up and read and you think you can understand the ramifications and nuances and the legal principles? People read law their entire lives and they still can't understand it. These fly-by-night pseudo-intellectuals have not even tried to read the law, but they lecture publicly about the law. Then he also, this same wild man, is criticizing the Prime Minister for activating a constitutional process in relation to the Police Service Commission. The Constitution says what the Prime Minister must do if the question arises, if the situation arises, as a situation has arisen in relation to the Police Service Commission. The Prime Minister is following the law. He's not violating the law. Had he asked Slow et al. To demit office, then he would have been violating the law. He is following a process laid down by the Constitution in relation to the discipline or disciplinary measure to be taken against constitutional office holders of the caliber and status of the Police Service Commission. It's a constitutional process that is being activated. And this wild man is accusing the Prime Minister of violating the law. And as I am on this issue, let me deal with what I see as a response from Mr. Selwyn Peters, the attorney at law for Mr. Slow and others. Mr. Peters has submitted a response based upon the reports in the press. And in his response, among the things that he's contending is that the two grounds upon which the Constitution says that these people can be removed from office have not been identified in the letter written by the Prime Minister. Now, the Prime Minister wrote a 2-page letter in which he outlines the reasons why he is asking them to show cause. He gave them all in great details. This is the wrong which I am alleging against you. The wrong in relation to Slow and in relation to the other person, I can't remember his name now. The wrong is, among the wrong is the fact that they have been charged and placed before the court for some serious criminal offenses, including fraud, including sexual assault. Then the entire commission, the Prime Minister is asking them, is saying to them in this letter that you have chosen a partisan political side by joining a politician in suing the government, and you have chosen to be represented by all the politicians who are lawyers in the opposition benches of the parliament in what is clearly a political case. How, by adopting that posture, how can you still appear to be and want to present yourself as an impartial, independent, autonomous body, which the Constitution says you must be? The Constitution says that in the discharge of your functions and in your every public posture, you must at all times appear to be impartial, independent, and free from political bias. You have joined a political party in litigation. You are represented in the cause by 6 parliamentarians, all of whom are politicians for one political party. You are suing to stop your own budget from being passed. Your own police service commission budget is what you don't want to pass. How can the people of Guyana have confidence in you? How can the police force over whom you are to exercise disciplinary control feel that you are impartial, that you are independent, that you are free from political bias when you are hugging politicians in the court and joining them in litigation? It can't happen. The law will not permit it. The Constitution does not contemplate it. The Constitution prohibits it. And when that happens, that constitutes, Mr. Peters, it constitutes one of the very ground that is stated there in the Constitution. It's called misbehavior. That is what misbehavior is. The Prime Minister need not specify the word misbehavior. Once he outlines the conduct against which he's complaining, obviously it is misbehavior. And that is the ground. I see that you have difficulty in not appreciating what the ground is. Well, the ground is misbehavior. There are 2 grounds: infirmity of body or mind, or misbehavior. Which one will it fall under, having regard to the facts that I have outlined? Obviously, it is misbehavior. The law looks at substance and not form. The law looks at substance. The law always have regard to substance over form. So that is the ground. If you need clarity, let me clarify it for you right now. That is the ground upon which the Prime Minister is asking them to show cause, why they should not be removed from office. And that is what the Constitution allows. That is what the Constitution prescribes. And that is what this government will do. And I am the legal advisor. And I am legally advising the Prime Minister on how to act in this matter. That is my job. That is my portfolio responsibility. As I am on this issue again with Myers and Mingo and Lowenfield, they are back in the police. I read in the newspapers that the police would like to see them. Apparently, well, let me report that the SOPs have been fully handed over by the Registrar of the Supreme Court to the Guyana Police Force. The entire process has been videotaped, and the entire process is now concluded. And the police now have in their possession all the statements of poll that GCOM had given to the registrar pursuant to an order of the Honorable Chief Justice. The Chief Justice made another order directing that the registrar afford copies of these statements of poll to the members of the police force and the DPP. That, as I was reporting to you last week, that exercise was ongoing then. It is now completed, and the police now have all the statements of poll. And the prosecution now have access to them to present them in the court to show the fraud that was going to be perpetrated as per the charges. Now that the statements of poll are in the receipt of the police, new charges are going to be instituted now. A new conspiracy charge is going to be instituted based upon what is reported in the public domain. Because now you can easily see from the statements of poll and what Mingo was attempting to present, the fraud and the magnitude of the fraud. You can clearly see now from the statements of recounts and the statements of poll what Lowenfield was attempting to put in his report was a very different set of figures. That constitutes another set of fraud and forgery. So new charges are going to be added. These are additional charges, and they will be filed shortly. So that process is an ongoing one, and we know that the public is looking on and is anxiously awaiting for the prosecution to begin their presentation of evidence. But we now have the evidence, and when I say we, I mean the state, the prosecution, and the prosecution will be preparing to present their evidence in the court in accordance with law. I want to spend some time to update you on what my ministry has been doing over the past several months. I keep speaking on a whole set of matters, but sometimes I omit to speak about the agenda of the Ministry of Legal Affairs and the Attorney General Chambers. Of course, we are covered in litigation, and every day we have different cases in which we are appearing and defending the government and the state and various agencies of the state. That is what is one of the principal functions of the Attorney General Chambers, and that is an ongoing exercise. In terms of political litigation, you would have read in the newspapers that we have filed an appeal against the ruling of the learned Chief Justice in relation to parliamentary secretaries. We have also recently filed an application for two things. One, an application for a stay of the effect of the Chief Justice's order, as well as an application for the appeal to be heard early. We are confident that we will succeed in the appeal. We are confident that parliamentary secretaries must sit somewhere, and as the name suggests, it is Parliament. And that's one of the simple reasons why the Chief Justice cannot be right. The parliamentary secretaries can't be outside of the Parliament. That is their abode, as the appellation suggests. I see it being bandied about, and I had to issue a statement last week that I was advocating that the government breach the order of the Chief Justice and put the people to sit in the National Assembly. I never said anything like that. And I clarify that in a statement, and I hope that is clear enough. What I said is just like how the press has a place in the National Assembly, just like how the parliamentary staff have a place in the National Assembly, well, these two can have a place too. But it has to be physically different from the rest of the Assembly, and they will not be allowed to participate, at least until I get a stay of the effect of the Chief Justice's order. So that issue is before the Court of Appeal, and I feel that the stay should be granted, as happened in the case of Felix and Scott. The Chief Justice and everyone believe that these cases, the Felix and Scott case and the Parliamentary Secretary case, are on all fours. Everyone is saying that. Well, if it is on all fours, then it should be treated the same way, meaning that the stay should be granted until the appeal is heard, because a stay was granted in relation to Felix and Scott, and the appeal was heard subsequently. And all I am asking is that the same treatment be meted out if the cases are on all fours. A court has a duty to be uniformed and to be consistent in its ruling. It has a duty to follow its own decision once the facts are similar. In this case, and the legal issues are similar. In this case, it is contended that they are identical. That makes my case for a stay stronger, because the Court of Appeal previously granted the same order in relation to Felix and Scott. But a date will have to be fixed, and we will have to argue that. Also, next Monday, the Court of Appeal will hear arguments on the election petition appeal filed by APNU AFC. You will recall that the Chief Justice dismissed that particular petition, Petition 88, on the ground that it was not served in time. And they have appealed that decision. Yours truly have filed a notice of motion in which I am contending that the Court of Appeal has no jurisdiction to hear the appeal. Mr. Mendez, Senior Counsel, who appears for Bharat Jagdev, have joined me in presenting legal submissions that the Court of Appeal has no such jurisdiction. And I believe GCOM's lawyer, Mr. Astafan, he also is of the same view that the Court of Appeal has no jurisdiction to hear and determine the appeal that is filed. The law is that it is the duty of every court, whether at first instance or appeal, either on an application or on its own motion, to satisfy itself that it has jurisdiction to hear a case before it begins to hear the case. We are at that stage. The court must satisfy itself that it has jurisdiction. It can't take a single step forward unless it has jurisdiction. That is the law. And that is the law right across the Commonwealth. So we have to go there Monday. All the written submissions, I think, are in by now, and it is for oral presentation. I believe that you can join in on Zoom, as is normally permitted in these types of cases. So please join us next Monday as we begin the arguments in the Court of Appeal against the elections petition filed by APNU AFC. Back to the agenda of the AG's office. As you are aware, we are establishing a law reform commission, and you may be aware also, you may recall, that we amended the Principal Act to expand the scope of the Law Reform Commission, expand the membership of the commission. The one that APNU AFC wanted to establish was one where Basil Williams, the AG, and the president alone appoints the commission, and everyone on the commission were supposed to be lawyers. We changed that. We brought in a consultative process whereby the private sector, the labor movement, religious organization, rights organization, all of them have a say. Also the Bar Association, etc. They have nominees to send to the minister. And also the president can appoint two in his deliberate judgment, two commissioners. We have received all the names from the various organizations, and the president have them now with him, and appointments will be made very shortly, and this commission will be up and running. In terms of the secretariat of the commission, the entire clerical and secretarial staff vacancies were advertised, and applications were received, and the IDB is the agency that's funding this exercise, so they are responsible for the evaluation of the staff, and they have evaluated the staff, and I believe they have made recommendations as to who will constitute the secretariat of the commission. That process is completed, and those persons are to begin to work very shortly. And hopefully the president concludes his role in the process, and the appointments are made speedily so that we can have the commission up and running before the end of this month. I have also commenced a law revision exercise. What is law revision? Law revision is that process whereby you insert all the amendments that would have taken place in the law, and you incorporate them into their principal acts, and then you consolidate it so you have one modern volume of the laws, all updated. The last time we did this exercise was when I was Attorney General in 2012. And we completed it in 2012. It started long before that because we had a serious hiatus. Not since 1977 was there a law revision done in Guyana. Not since 1977. My predecessor, Senior Counsel Dude Not Singh, and Charles Ramson started the law revision exercise, and I had the honor and privilege of concluding it, and that was done in 2012. Well, from 2012 to 2021, we would have passed a whole series of new laws. We need to get them into the consolidated volumes so that our laws are updated, so that when you pick up a volume of the laws of Guyana, you can read it with some degree of confidence that it represents the latest update of the laws of this country. And you don't have to go and read it and then check which amendment, which sections in it were amended, and then go and find that amendment. The law revision exercise allows you to incorporate and consolidate all the laws. I have begun that process. It's a massive undertaking, and I am getting invaluable assistance from an organization out of Caville Campus, University of the West Indies, Barbados, an organization called Impact Justice. It's a Canadian funded program, I think, and there's a really nice lady there, Professor Vilma Newton, and she is helping me in this exercise. I have a unit established within the Attorney General Chambers, which is chaired by me. It's called the Law Revision Commission. I'm the chairman of that, and we have 3 persons working with me in this exercise. And we are working in collaboration with our counterparts in Barbados, and hopefully we push this agenda forward so that we can complete this exercise shortly. I am also working on an update of the law reports of Guyana. the law reports of Guyana. Now, the law reporting is a very important part of the legal architecture of any country. It is where you have the countries or the nation's top reported cases documented into volumes. Recall that law is based upon precedent. Judges decide cases based upon previous decisions made by previous judges on similar issues. That is how judges decide cases. And if you don't have a proper law reporting system, then judges can't do research, lawyers can do research, academic-minded persons can do research, law students can do research. The last time I was Attorney General, I completed another 10 years from 1977 to 2007. And now I'm back again. I'm going to do 2007 to 2020. It is, again, a gigantic undertaking, but again, I'm getting the assistance from Professor Newton in Barbados under the same program. But the important issue is that we have to accumulate all the cases, all the Guyanese cases decided by the High Court, by the Court of Appeal since 2007, and the Caribbean Court of Justice, pile all of them together and then take the leading cases and brief them and put them in the form of the books, the law reports. So it's an expensive exercise and it's a time-consuming exercise, and it is also a huge undertaking and endeavor. But we have to get the work done. So we have to push this agenda forward. Of course, the Attorney General Chambers also has the responsibility of executing the government's legislative agenda. As you are aware, we are now engaged in drafting the reforms for our election laws. I have spoken about that repeatedly over the past few months, that the drafting process has begun, and hopefully we will have a final draft which will be used as a basis for consultation and public engagement soon. That is an ongoing process. And then we have a series of legislation that we are working on. For example, right now we are working on a condominium bill. There has been great expression of interest in Guyana for the establishment and construction of condominiums, townhouses, apartment complexes, etc. The Housing Ministry also is interested in doing condominiums and apartments as part of its housing drive. The law currently in Guyana is outdated and does not make ownership of condominium easily done. In fact, the last government actually, with their usual incompetence, they gave out or they sold condominiums to persons without checking the law. And as a result, they could not have passed title to the people that they sold to. And they ended up converting those poor people into tenants. So those people are now in their condominiums under the new housing programs, but they have no title. They are paying a rent. So the whole purpose was defeated. And all they had to do was to go and look at the law and get a new bill or change the law to facilitate that type of development. But of course, that is how they operate. That is their modus operandi. It reeks of incompetence from top to bottom, no matter what the endeavor is. And we are doing a whole host of other bills. For example, food security bill, solid waste management bill, and a new environmental protection bill, a food security bill. Now this food safety and food security bills are two very important pieces of legislation that we have to get into place as we move forward. Recall we have said that we will not make the error of over-concentrating on the oil sector, that we will use the proceeds generated by that sector to develop our other potential, in particular our agro potential, so that we can actually become a supplier of food for the Caribbean, the breadbasket, if you wish, to use a historical term, of the Caribbean. But to do that, we have to lay the foundation and create the infrastructure. And part of that foundation and infrastructure is the legal structure. We have to put the law in place to ensure that there is food security and food safety to meet international standards. Right now, our agri-sector is not at that level. We have to build it, but we have to have the laws in place so that the milk, and all the foods that we are producing, they can meet international requirements. Unless they meet those requirements in terms of packaging, processing, the way the animals are killed, the water that is being used for the agriculture industry, etc., unless we meet those kinds of international guidelines and standards, we will not be able to export on the world market or even in the international market regionally. And so we have to start to work on that. So we are working on that. We are getting help from the FAO of the United Nations. They are guiding us, and we have technical people within the Ministry of Agriculture who are working with us, but this is a priority on our agenda. The President has, in a special address to CARICOM, has requested that Guyana resume its seat as the main mover and pusher of the agro agenda at the CARICOM heads. Recall when President Jack Day was there, he was doing that with the Jack Day Agricultural Initiative. But after he left, there has been a lapse. And President Ali is rightfully very much interested in getting this agenda back on the front burner so that we can push this agenda and we can be able to situate ourselves strategically to supply the Caribbean at least with food. I have often said that the Caribbean food bill alone is $10 billion. $10 billion. Imagine if, US dollars, imagine if we can get a quarter of that. And we have the food. We have the capacity to produce the greens, the vegetables, the fresh meat, the milk. We have more than capacity to provide and feed these our Caribbean brothers and sisters and their economies. There is no question about that. We just need to ready ourselves and to meet our international obligations so that we can unleash this gigantic potential that we have in the agro industry. And that is where President Ali is focusing at CARICOM. So that is going to be a reality, and we have to continue to work to make that a reality. Well, we have Parliament will be sitting Thursday, and we should have some very interesting matters on the agenda. I believe that it is Opposition Day, so the opposition will, I suppose their agenda will be dominant in the parliamentary sittings, but we have a series of bills that we have to lay, amendments to the Narcotics Act, amendments to the Evidence Act, amendments to the Police Act, amendments to the Births and Deaths Act, amendments to the Rules of Intestacy, and so on. Very, very important pieces of legislation that you will hear about. Those bills, some of them are very small, but they are transformational. For example, there is a bill to change the Civil Law Act in relation to how properties will transmit upon the death of the owner if that owner is married but there is no children being issues of that marriage. Currently the law says that the property of the deceased must go between the wife and the mother-in-law and father-in-law and siblings. We want to change that, but you will hear more about that when we speak, when the bills rather are laid in the National Assembly, because I don't want to speak about it unless it becomes public in the official way. So that is the look forward for Parliament. We are meeting there on next Thursday. I wrote a brief piece on the question of bail last week sometime, because we can't remain quiet in the face of the manner in which magistrates exercise their discretion in granting and or refusing bail. Now, I am not being critical of the magistracy, but I have a duty as a citizen and as Attorney General to speak about these matters. And not every criticism of the judicial system is prohibited. Once you do not bring the judicial system into disrepute, you do not bring the judges or magistrates into disrepute, you do not attribute to them some ulterior, illicit motive for coming to their decisions, you can faithfully criticize them, provided, of course, that your criticism is grounded in reason and based upon principles. And I am saying that you can't have gun offenses being so prevalent in Guyana, violent crimes being so prevalent in Guyana, persons being robbed and beaten being so prevalent in Guyana, the Firearms Act saying that a person who is found with unlawful possession of a firearm and or ammunition must show a special reason or else bail will not be granted. That's what the law says. On what basis are these magistrates granting bail for these offenses when these people appear before them for the first time? Somebody called me and told me, well, the prosecutor did not oppose. That is not a basis for the magistrate to grant bail. We amended the law. We amended the law to say that bail shall not be granted unless special reason is provided. Bail shall not be granted unless special reason is provided. So there is a prohibition against the grant of bail unless you have special reason. What is a special reason? The term special reason, as I wrote in that article, has been judicially interpreted to relate to the offense and not the offender. Meaning that there must be something about the offense that must constitute the special reason. Not whether the man is, something happens to him, he's blind or he's deaf, that relates to the offender. That is of no moment. That is how the law has been interpreted. The very day that these two persons were put on bail, somebody was executed on Main Street, a stone throw away from the court. Then I subsequently read that a couple was robbed at Better Hope by a 19-year-old young man riding a bicycle with an unlawful gun in his hand, or a licensed gun in his hand, rob a couple, and the people appear before the court, and the magistrate released the gentleman, the young man, on $20,000 bail. How can that be a proper exercise of jurisdiction, of discretion? It cannot be. And I will not stay quiet. I will not remain quiet. Whence these excesses take place, the society must speak. This is not proper for the administration of justice. I don't criticize the judiciary. I don't, unless it's absolutely necessary. But here, in the face of a crime wave that has gripped this country for the longest while, we have magistrates exercising their discretion in this alarmingly inconsistent and, I would say, strange way, not in keeping with what the law says and not in keeping with what the principles are in relation to the grant or refusal of bail. Well, the opposition not saying much and not doing much, and I don't know whether that's bad or good, because whenever they do anything, they hardly make any sense. I see Mr. Joseph Harman again alleging that we are only visiting certain communities inundated with water. I don't understand. If you look at our press, if you look at the press reports, we are visiting regions. Our president was in Region 7, along with our ministers. They were in Region 2. They were in Region 8. They were in Region 5. They were in Region 6. We were in Region 10. I don't understand. Who live in these regions? Who live in these regions? How can these people come up with these ridiculous contentions and allegations? Every single week is a different outrageous allegation being peddled by one or two of them. And it's led by Mr. Harman, the leader of the opposition. So I don't have much to say about the leader of the opposition and the APNU AFC, because they're simply not doing much. I don't have the stomach nor the time to listen to their Facebook shows and their Facebook programs, but they look at mine, because a whole set of people always keep telling me what this one has said and what this one said, and I must respond and I must sue this one. I don't have the time nor the energy. I have a lot of important work to do. We are pushing the developmental agenda of our country. That is our government's priority. We have to look at all the investments that are coming into the country. We have to process people's applications. We have to deal with all the corruption. Every day we still continue to deal with the corruption that has been bequeathed upon us by the APNU AFC. Look at what the forensic audit is revealing at GWI. Look at that. $50 million for Christmas party, $30 million for overseas travels, $26 million for food. I don't understand. And let me tell you that this is not unique to GWI. This is what punctuated and permeated the entire governmental structure when APNU AFC was there. That is why the cost of government went up so many-fold, because these people were eating drinking and traveling. That is what they did the most. How I am thinking over and over in my head, how can a party for an organization cost $50 million, 250,000 US? How? What are they eating? What are they drinking? Food is cheap in Guyana. Liquor is cheap in Guyana. What are these people eating and drinking? And where did they travel to blow out $28 million? And they add nearly 100 and something persons to the staff of GWI. And that is what they did right across the public sector. Swelling the bill, swelling the wage bill to an unsustainable level. Somebody called me, the Minister of Health was telling me that at Mabaruma Hospital, you have one doctor, you have 3 nurses, you have 16 assistant nurses and 9 porters, and they got 2 patients in the hospital. 9 porters, 16 assistant nurses, that's what they're called, all of them untrained, all of them party hacks, with 3 nurses and 1 doctor. That is what we inherited at Port Kaituma Hospital. And that is how they ran this country. That is how they ran this country. That is why when we said to you, when we were in opposition, when we said that the food bill of the government, the dietary of the government increased to $2 billion, increased by $2 billion, nearly $2 billion. People felt that we were exaggerating. We were not. It was in the budget when you compare the previous budget with what they were budgeting for. Look at lands and surveys. You saw the food bill being made public. The food bill from 2020, from January 2020 to August 2020 when they left government. It was some 18 million. 18 million. I don't understand. There's no school, there's no feeding program going on there. Lunch is not bought for the employees. So where, and the bills are there. The bills with the restaurants, I don't want to call the restaurants names, but they were all there, they were all made public. I should call them. They were all made public, some $17 million in 8 months. From January to August. 8 months. In a COVID pandemic when 50% of the staff were not going to work. Because they were maintaining COVID measures. Yet they eat out $18 million of food. And that is exactly what they were doing at GWI. And hiring their friends and cronies. Who you think have to pay that bill? How can we sustain an economy? That is why Taran Kemraj, and I will close with this because the operator is signaling to me. Dr. Taran Kemraj, in his analysis, said that when we left government, we left the treasury with some $14 billion a year. And when in 2015 and in 2020, we inherited a deficit of 93 billion. A deficit of 93 billion. And what do they have to show for it? What do they have to show for it? I don't mind if monies are being spent and you can point to projects and you can point to infrastructure and say, we did this with the money. Nothing to show. What they spent it on? Food, parties, travels. That is what they did for 5 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we have come to the end of this program. My operator is signaling to me that we are now approaching program time. I want to thank you very much for spending the last hour with me in discussing the various issues that we have addressed. Please stay safe. Please enjoy the rest of the week. And I will see you next week as we continue our discourse. Good evening and take care. Thank you very much.